Johan. We are SomerSand, and we are very happy to have Kenn Adams as our guest today. Please let us know about emotional archaeology. What on earth is that?
Yes, well, emotional archaeology is a term I use to talk about the different layers of emotion that we can discover within a character throughout the course of the scene. And the reason it's important is because very often when a scene is going well and suddenly gets stalled and the two characters seem to get trapped at a certain moment in the scene, one of the reasons that happens is because the characters have latched on to the emotional truth that they have at the moment. So, for example, they are angry at their partner, and so they hang on to that anger, or they are madly in love with their partner and they hold on to that love. And any one of those is a wonderful choice. But if you want the scene to continue to advance and develop and hold interest for a long amount of time, we can't stay there, because if you stay at the same emotional level, then you are going to be using the same tactic again and again in order to achieve your objective. So if this were a scene of dramatic conflict and the two characters had two opposing objectives, one wanted this and the other one wanted the other thing, and one of them was angry at the other one, and that was the way they were trying to achieve their objective, through anger. Well, once that fails, if the character continues to express that anger, the scene is going to get repetitive and tedious because we've already seen that tactic. It didn't work, and the character is just running through it again. So that's when we need to let our characters change. Let our characters discover the next level of emotional archaeology. So if I'm angry with you and my anger isn't working, perhaps I can suddenly remember the love that you and I once felt and allow that anger to transition to that sense of poignancy that would come from remembering the more tender parts of our relationship. When I allow my character to go from anger to love or sympathy or empathy, there's a whole new series of tactics that are going to come along with that. And to extend this archaeology metaphor, we can talk about those in terms of the emotional artifacts. What are the things we discover as we dig deeper and deeper and shed layer after layer of the current emotion and allow the deeper emotions to come out? So when I'm angry at you, some of the emotional artifacts that we might find at that level of anger are all of the ways you've wronged me in the past, and I throw those in your face. But until we get past that and we get to the next level, let's say, of the love that we once felt for each other, I'm not going to discover other emotional artifacts like that beautiful night we met on the beach and all of the trust we had for each other and the beautiful child we raised together. So you see, those emotional artifacts are only going to be discovered if you allow the character to dig deeper and deeper into their emotional archaeology. And that's how scenes can become quite long. And not that length is a measure of quality, but if your scene is long, it has to earn that length by continuing to bring new information and new tactics to the character's pursuit of their objective. And the only way to do that in an emotionally truthful way is to allow your character to sink into different emotions.
So you talked about emotional artifacts. So can you give some more concrete examples in certain scenes?
Yeah, it just means the type of offers that you would come up with when your character is experiencing one emotional level of connection with the other person as opposed to a different. So again, let's say we were doing a scene and this was a scene of dramatic conflict and I wanted to go to college and you were my parents and you needed me to stay home and work in the shop and you wouldn't send me to college. So scene of dramatic conflict. And let's say that you two are very angry with me and I'm very upset with you and we're having a nice nice dramatic conflict about going to college. No, you need to stay here and work in the shop, right? So we could play that for a while, but once those tactics have been played, then we risk just being repetitive if our characters keep those emotional states, right? But suddenly, if you, Johan, as the parent, suddenly realized, you love me, you care about me, you don't want to see my whole life ruined, and you take a moment to let your character let the anger go away and let the love come in. It doesn't mean you need to give up your objective and let me go to college, but it means you're going to be reacting to be now in order to pursue your objective through the lens of that new emotion. So where the emotional artifact in that first level might be, it's the family tradition, everybody works in the shop. The emotional artifact, the thing you might discover when you let the love come in, is that you remember, I always had dreams of being an artist.
Yeah.
And you suddenly feel sad that I would have to give up that dream in order to work in the shop. So you see, if you stayed at that level of anger, you would never have discovered that artifact about me wanting to be an artist. That is only something you would discover at a different level of emotion.
Yeah. And that can also be played the other way around, that we go about talking about perhaps a little bit more about family tradition and the love between myself and your grandfather or grandmother, but also coming into place a feeling of guilt. Yeah, why would you stop with that? Instead of being angry and going to that emotional artifact, guilt, and
yes, and that's how the characters can build on each other. So we start with you being angry and me being upset. Then you go into remembering how much you love and care for me, and then that makes me remember that I love and care for you too. And suddenly I start to feel my next level, which is guilt at taking away something from you that you care so much about. And you see, that way there's no villain and hero, no cardboard cutouts, but three-dimensional people who have lots of different emotions, sometimes contradictory, and cause internal struggles as well as external struggles.
If I go back to what you said, the two characters could be angry at each other, but then they love each other, and so the audience cares about both characters. But at some point, how do you define who is going to be the villain? Because the villain is always going to be wanting to hate the other one and take advantage.
Yes, well, I think I would offer that it is not necessary to have a villain. I don't think there needs to be a villain. For example, in the scene that we were just playing around with, if the two of you were my parents and I was this kid and I wanted to go to college, none of us hate each other or want to see the other one hurt. Even though the parents might be so angry at the moment, they're behaving in such a way that is irrational or hurtful. But deep down in those other layers, they don't want to hurt me. They don't want to ruin my life. And I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to ruin your life. We love each other. We're a family. We just happen to be having a problem at the moment. So I don't think that it needs to be portrayed in terms of a villain and, a hero. I think it just needs to be characters who care deeply about getting something from that other person, and that's the one thing that other person can't give them at the moment. I need you to let me go to college, and the one thing you can't do for me right now is let me go to college because you need me to work in the shop, right? And you need me to work in the shop, but I'd do anything in the world for you except that because I need to go to college. That's a great dramatic conflict between real people who have real needs from each other. And there are really no heroes or villains.
Say, for example, you are doing something that the other person doesn't like because you care about them. But in real life, there are things like jealousy, ambition. Does that not play a role into it?
Yeah. No, that's great. And you're absolutely right. There certainly can be and should be scenes in which there are villains. Some characters are villains. I would only say that even villains need emotional archaeology. And if you think back to the greatest villains that that there's always those moments where you see the softer side of the villain, right? Even if if it's one level and they just stay malicious and evil throughout the whole thing, it's very one-dimensional, and ultimately you don't care about that character as much. But when you understand why the villain has become this way, or even if the character is completely villainous, but nonetheless, they have, a young orphan child that they've adopted and that they care about, and they happen to love this one child. One of my favorite books in the whole world is, Clarissa by Samuel Richardson. It's an old book, one of the first novels. It's 1,000,000 pages long, and the whole book is about this horrible, horrible person named Lovelace, who has decided that he's interested in corrupting this young virgin, and spends the whole book doing these horrible things in order to entrap her. He's a terrible human being. You just hate him, except that for some reason he has taken an affection towards this young girl in his community that has been orphaned, and he is perfectly loving and appropriate to her. He has no ulterior motives towards her. He just gives money to the family. He cares about her, and he takes care of this woman, this child. And that's it. That's that level of emotional archaeology that we see in Lovelace's character that makes it too easy to hate him outright.
So you really are building a world of a character, a three-dimensional person with deeper emotions, and not everything is evil or good, because we are all, I guess, a little bit of a mixture of everything. And when you try to use these in an improv scene and not stay on that one emotional thing, angry, for example, you really can build deeper meaning scenes. That's exactly right. Yes, I think one of the things that gets in our way of that is that we often want our character very, very much to win. We want our character to be the one who is proven correct at the end of the scene. And again, like we were talking about in that other video, sometimes you need to see what the story wants and prioritize the needs of the story above you. And often what that means is your character needs to be proven wrong, or your character needs to change and realize that, I thought my character's point of view was correct, and I have to make this person see it my way. And then you realize, wait a minute, I can see it their way, and my character can change. And that's hard because of that instinct we have to win and to be right. But we have to understand that it's not about winning. Your character wants to win, but as the improviser, the story needs to win by allowing the right person to change, and often that's you.
So as a writer and as a character designer, you could end up designing a very evil character that the audience are going to like in the end, because you can see so many reasons why he's become evil, and then the audience wants him or her to win. That's amazing.
Yes. Well, and then of course you need to make judgments about what you want the audience to feel about those characters at the end. And it is still, it is perfectly all right to have a character who is a villain, who behaves villainously and gets punished at the end. But even Iago, who in Othello is perhaps one of the most unmotivated villains in the world. Like, it's very, very hard to understand exactly why Iago is doing all of these things. But even Iago has a moment where he expresses sadness over the fact that his wife has been rumored to cheat on him. There's some level of archaeology there that gives a tiny little bit of sympathy, or if not sympathy, at least justification to his actions. So there's some attempt at least to show some levels of archaeology there that support the entire character, as opposed to just that one level. So the villains are more powerful if the audience finds a moment of sympathy or empathy with them, because it makes them that much more dangerous.
What would you suggest for those that are starting as actors or improvisers? What is the best way to dig into your personal emotions?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. I think improvisers have to know how to do four things very well, at least a minimum of four things. One is improvise. That's the art form, improvisation, but also playwriting, acting, and directing. All of those things are different art forms. And when we study only improvisation, we don't really learn those other things. And that's why there's a lot of improvisation that is very one-dimensional and stays on that level of kind of silly sketch comedy. It's because we're seeing people who have studied improvisation and have really mastered the art of improvisation, but we're not seeing actors who can really create a fully three-dimensional character. And we're not seeing playwrights who really know how to craft a story that will hold the audience's interest for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, or directors who know how to move people around on stage or move themselves around on stage in a way that creates images that support the narrative. Those are art forms that people spend lifetimes trying to master, let alone trying to do them all at the same time while making it up with 6 other people. When you think about the hubris involved with what we suggest we can do, and then sometimes the lack of training with which we do it, I think that's the problem. So the answer to your question is, one, study acting. If you want to go out there and be a great actor, study acting, learn how to act, and learn how to access emotions in a truthful way. The acting teacher that I particularly enjoy reading and learning from was this fellow named Sanford Meisner, and his famous Meisner technique with the repetition exercises that a lot of people know about is very improvisational in nature. And he has a wonderful quote that I always use, and that is, acting is truthful behavior in imaginary circumstances. Truthful behavior in imaginary circumstances. And that truthful behavior has to do with the truthful display of emotions. So if, in an improvisation scene, if you are in a haunted house, it is very often the case that perhaps we are not really seeing that haunted house or hearing the noises in the floorboards, and certainly not feeling that sense of fear and anxiety and nervousness about being in the haunted house. That's the acting part that we don't study enough as improvisers.
Just to say that improvisation is a very complicated art form. If you do the 4 pillars, playwright, directing, acting, and improvisation as such, and all on the spot, on the fly. And I think for many people, that's just so amazing that you can attempt to do that and grow in that. It's a sort of lifelong learning experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think it is, and it should be, right? Just the way actors never stop training, they never stop practicing their craft, they never assume they've reached the pinnacle and there's no more to learn. So I think it's a lot like learning something like chess. It only takes a few minutes to learn how all of the pieces move and you can start playing, but you're just not going to be a very good chess player. Even if you happen to win every once in a while, you're still not a master chess player. It takes a lifetime to really understand all of the depth and potential between that lies, beneath those X number of moves you can make each time it's your turn. So it's a lifetime of practice and study, and again, not just improvisation, but the tools you need to be a great improviser, which at a minimum is acting, directing, and playwriting. If you perform musical improvisation, then you need to add dance and lyric writing and singing.
Exactly true.
Right?
Wow.
Okay, do we have other questions, Mahi?
No. Well, I do have a lot of questions, but we don't have enough time, and there are different subjects. But we would love to have Kenn back at some point because you have so much knowledge about everything. But for now, we have to say thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much. This was a great pleasure and great fun, and I will be happy to come back anytime you like.
That's awesome.
Great.
Perhaps we can add some new topics, chats about improv in the near future. That would be awesome.
Love it.
Okay. So many thanks for being with us. And we also play the scene together, which will also be on our YouTube channel.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.